I used to think that loving my child with all my heart would eventually teach him gratitude. But I never imagined that the very son I raised with my own hands would secretly take out a hefty life insurance policy on me, and then scheme to make my death look like a tragic accident on a hiking trip. What he didn't realize was that I was the one who had the real plan brewing all along. Colin, I just transferred $330,000 to your account, I said gently as I dialed my son, Colin Dawson. Make sure you get some good supplements for Vanessa. Take care of her and the baby, okay? Colin chuckled right away, his voice light and smooth, like the devoted husband and grateful son he pretended to be. Of course, Mom. I'm going to be a dad now. You can bet I'll take great care of Vanessa and our little one. I was about to say more, maybe savor that moment a little longer when he abruptly cut me off. All right, Mom, gotta run. Some stuff going on here. Not a single word of thanks, not even the smallest hint of appreciation. I swallowed the sting of disappointment and forced a soft reply. Okay then. Love you, sweetheart. But just as I was about to hang up, I caught a sentence that would haunt me forever. Finally, the old woman sent the money. My heart sank. It was Vanessa's voice. I froze, breath caught, still clutching at a sliver of hope that maybe Colin would speak up, say something, anything to defend me, even if half-hearted. But I was dead wrong. Colin scoffed, the sound sharp and dismissive. She's way too cautious. We had to fake a pregnancy just to get that money. My fingers trembled, tightening around the phone without me even noticing. In that moment, every warm memory shattered like fragile glass, leaving only a cold bitterness deep inside my chest. Colin had always been reckless with money. Before he got married, he constantly came to me for handouts, sometimes a few $100s, sometimes thousands, even tens of thousands. And I helped him every single time. When gambling debts piled up, I was the one plugging every hole, one mess after another. But I wasn't naive. I knew exactly what kind of man he was. I always held something back, a safety net in case things went wrong. This time, though, I let my guard down completely because he said Vanessa was pregnant. Now I finally saw the truth for what it was, colder than the harshest winter and sharper than any blade. After the wedding, Colin hardly came around anymore. Calls became fewer, more spaced out. I told myself he was just busy, that married life demanded his attention. I made up 1,000 excuses for him. But today I realized I had never truly mattered in his world. Through the phone, Vanessa's cheerful voice floated in, chatting with Colin about how they should spend my money. I stood frozen in the middle of my living room, phone still in hand, as a hollow silence echoed in my ears, feeling like the whole world was mocking me. Only when the call ended did it fully hit me. I regretted everything. The tragedy was that this realization came far too late. What I didn't expect was that just 2 days later, Colin showed up at my doorstep. After years of living alone, the sound of someone knocking felt almost foreign. I rubbed my eyes, walked to the door, and opened it to find Colin standing there, Vanessa right beside him. Colin, I greeted with a warm smile, trying to sound as natural as possible. What brings you here today? He grinned like everything was perfectly normal, handing me a bag and pressing it into my arms without hesitation. Had a free day? Figured I'd drop by and check on you, he said casually. Brought some supplements too. Thought you might need a little boost to stay healthy. Vanessa quickly jumped in, flashing that polished, perfectly rehearsed smile. Helen, you have no idea. Colin talks about you all the time. He's just been swamped with work and hasn't had a chance to visit. I looked at them and couldn't help but laugh inwardly. They really were committed to this act, playing their roles flawlessly. Well then, if they wanted to put on a show, I was more than willing to play along. Just the thought means a lot to me, I said softly, patting Colin's arm. Come in. As soon as he stepped inside the living room, Colin motioned for me to sit. Mom, don't just stand there. Let's have a little chat. I already had a feeling this visit wasn't just a friendly check-in. And sure enough, he scratched his head in that deliberately casual way, glanced sideways at Vanessa, then said offhandedly, So, you know Vanessa's pregnant. The apartment we have, it's way too cramped. We thought maybe we could move in with you for a while. I didn't respond immediately. I simply smiled faintly, looking at both of them. Vanessa quickly added, sighing softly as if the idea was painful to admit. It's been really tough, Helen. The place is so small, and with the baby coming, it's just not healthy for either of us. There it was, the truth laid bare. They'd been eyeing this house for a long time. The single-family home I live in, nestled near the city center. Quiet, safe, and close to everything. The property's value has long since crossed the $1 million mark. Colin grew up here. He knows exactly what it's worth. I nodded slightly, keeping my voice steady. Of course you can. Colin's eyes lit up immediately, but there was a flicker in his expression. He wasn't quite satisfied yet. He hesitated, then pressed on, testing the waters. Well, since we're going to be living here anyway, maybe it makes sense to put the house in my name. That way, I can handle the property taxes and maintenance, take that burden off your shoulders. Vanessa followed sweetly, her tone tender but with a hint of condescension. Exactly, Helen. We're family, right? You've done enough. It's time for you to relax, not worry about bills and chores. Listening to their little duet, I felt a strange mix of detachment and amusement. Once upon a time, I would have agonized over every request Colin made, willingly giving him everything. But now, he acted as if everything I owned belonged to him by default. That all I had to say was, "You're my mom," and I'd hand over the world. But this time, my heart stayed perfectly still. Sure, I said quietly. Colin froze for a moment. Vanessa's face flickered with surprise, as if they hadn't expected it to be this easy. I just pressed my lips together, still smiling as I looked at them. Go ahead, keep putting on your little performance. I'm eager to see just how far you think you can push this. Ever since I agreed to let Colin and Vanessa move in, the atmosphere in the house has shifted, subtly but unmistakably. By their second day here, Vanessa was already eager to curl up beside me on the couch, flashing that carefully rehearsed, saccharine smile. Helen, she said softly, how's the house transfer coming along? I looked up at her and sighed quietly. It'll take a few more days. The process is a bit more complicated than I thought. For a brief moment, her smile stiffened, just a flicker. But she quickly recovered with a breezy laugh. That's fine. We're in no rush. We'll wait. Of course, they had no choice but to wait. Until the paperwork was finalized, the house still legally belonged to me. From that day forward, their entire attitude shifted into something disturbingly sweet and wholesome. Vanessa began waking early to make breakfast for me. Colin, who hadn't lifted a finger in years, suddenly offered to clean the kitchen. Every word, every gesture dripped with affection. The perfect image of a loving daughter-in-law and a thoughtful son. But I knew better. It was all an act. They were simply biding their time, waiting for the perfect moment. Colin had never been one to serve anyone. As a child, he treated me like a maid, expecting meals and favors as his due. As an adult, he barely bothered to call, much less show any warmth. And now, out of nowhere, he was wiping down my dining table? What a joke. I had poured my life into raising him, sacrificed everything for his future. And in return, he saw me only as a gold mine to be drained dry. That night, sleep eluded me. I tossed and turned, haunted by a persistent question. Was I being too cold, too heartless? But if that were true, would I have forgiven him so many times? Would I have bent over backwards, giving chance after chance? I kept hoping he would change, still believing that genuine motherly love could heal any wound. Just as I wondered if I had become too distant, I heard whispers coming from the living room. I'm not one to eavesdrop, but something compelled me to move quietly toward the door. I pressed my ear against the wood, and what I overheard became a memory I'll never forget. As soon as she signs over the house, Colin said, his voice low and cold, we kick her out. I froze. Vanessa giggled, barely containing her excitement. Exactly. By then, all her inheritance should be ours anyway. My mother? Colin scoffed. She means nothing to me. She's dead weight. I've got you now. What do I need her for? A chill ran straight down my spine. This was the child I had loved with everything. I held our home together, raised him, watched him grow. I bailed him out of every mess and debt. And now, in his eyes, I was nothing but a burden. Where did I go so wrong? What did I do to raise such an ungrateful, heartless man? Maybe I loved him too much. Maybe I gave too freely, believing love meant selfless sacrifice. And maybe that sacrifice taught him he was entitled to everything. My mind drifted back to a memory I hadn't thought of in years. Colin was still in college the first time he got tangled in gambling. He racked up tens of thousands in debt before I even realized what was happening. When the loan shark started knocking, I saw how deep he'd fallen. He knelt at my feet, sobbing, begging me to save him, promising he'd never gamble again. And I believed him far too easily. I cut off his access to bank accounts, locked him in the house, hoping he'd finally see the damage he was causing. But instead, he raged. He smashed things, kicked doors, screamed threats. "If you keep this up, I'll kill myself," he yelled. Still, I couldn't give up on him. I wanted so badly to believe there was hope. Until one day, I brought him a bowl of hot soup. He snatched it from me and threw it in my face. The scalding liquid burned my arm red and raw. He stood over me, seething. "How long are you going to keep torturing me?" I remember kneeling there, silently cleaning up the broken bowl and spilled soup, my skin blistering, saying nothing. Was it wrong to bail him out? To give him another chance? Or was my true mistake believing someone so emotionally hollow could ever learn to love? On the surface, his life now looked more put together than ever. But he had only grown colder, more calculating and greedier. In his eyes, I had no worth at all. That night, I finally cried myself to sleep. What I didn't know was that something even worse was waiting just around the corner. Morning sunlight filtered through the blinds, casting soft stripes across the room as I slowly opened my eyes. Out of habit, I reached toward the side of the bed, but Goofy, the rug where he usually curled up every morning, was empty. No sign of my old companion who nudged me awake with his damp little nose. A tight knot formed in my chest. I sat up, threw off the blanket, and instinctively glanced toward the bedroom door. By now, Goofy should have been there waiting, tail wagging, ready for our usual morning walk in the backyard. But today, he wasn't. "Goofy, come here, sweetheart." I clapped my hands and walked toward the doorway, scanning the living room. I looked by the couch, under the dining table, near the stairs. Nothing. I headed to the kitchen. His water bowl by the fridge was still full, meaning he'd been home last night. But his food dish was empty. A wave of unease rose in my chest. "Goofy!" I called again, voice louder now, stepping toward the back door. I went out into the yard. The freshly mowed grass sparkled with dew. The morning air was thick with the scent of earth. But I couldn't enjoy any of it. "Goofy, come on, this isn't funny." My voice echoed in the stillness, but only birdsong replied. My fingertips grew cold. That gnawing anxiety twisted into something darker. Dread. I rushed back inside, searching every room. Behind the sofa, under the bed, in closets, behind bathroom doors. Still no sign. Finally, I walked to his dog bed. That little corner, once cluttered with old blankets, 2 toys, and his favorite squeaky ball, was now spotless, as if no dog had ever lived there. That's when it hit me. He hadn't wandered off. He'd been taken. A chill ran up my spine like a knife tracing down my back. I turned and walked into the living room. Colin and Vanessa sat at the dining table, eating breakfast without a care in the world. Vanessa dragged her manicured nails across her plate, making an irritating scraping noise. I paused, forcing my voice steady. "Colin, have either of you seen Goofy?" Colin didn't even glance up. He bit into a strip of bacon and waved a casual hand. "Oh, the dog? I took him out this morning and dumped him somewhere." A deafening roar exploded inside my mind, like my entire body had been hollowed out by a single blow. "You what?" My voice cracked into broken gasps as my nails dug into my palms, struggling to keep my emotions in check. Finally, Colin glanced up from his food, chewing lazily with complete indifference. "It's just an old dog, always underfoot. Figured the house would be a lot quieter without him." My ears rang, and my stomach churned as if I'd been punched hard in the gut. "You have no idea what he meant to me," I managed, voice trembling, my fingertips pale and shaking. He shrugged, utterly unfazed. "Come on, Mom, don't blow this out of proportion. You're 60 years old. Why are you still keeping a dog anyway? You've wasted 12 years and who knows how much money on that mutt. I did you a favor. Now you don't have to deal with it anymore." I stared at him speechless, lips quivering. Vanessa set down her fork, dabbed at her mouth with a napkin, and said with casual ease, "Honestly, Helen, you should be thanking Colin. He made the right call for you." I didn't reply. I just stood there, frozen. My eyes drifted to the coffee table where an old, faded photo rested. In it, I sat on the couch holding a 1-year-old Goofy in my arms, smiling with a warmth I could still vividly remember. That dog had been my comfort, my companion, my one constant. And now they had taken him from me without a hint of remorse. Sunlight poured through the windows, yet I'd never felt colder. It was as if my heart had finally crumbled, collapsing into a void so deep and dark I couldn't even find the bottom. Colin had hurt me before. I swallowed that pain. I accepted I'd raised an ungrateful, selfish man. But I never imagined the final blow, the one that would break me completely, would come from a dog. In that moment, I understood something with painful clarity. It was time to sever this charade of a mother-son bond once and for all. By the time I stepped away from the dining table, Colin and Vanessa still showed no remorse. If anything, they seemed to believe their cruelty was perfectly justified. I spent the afternoon sitting quietly in my room, my heart slowly settling into an eerie calm. Goofy, if you were still here, I'd want you to see this. See how they'll pay for their cruelty. The next day, I returned home carrying a document cleverly disguised as a house transfer agreement, a smile playing on my lips as I handed it to Colin. "All the paperwork's ready," I said evenly. "Consider it a gift to your little family." Colin's eyes lit up instantly. He snatched the papers from me like a man who just hit the jackpot, voice full of excitement. The noise drew Vanessa downstairs, her face glowing with barely concealed delight. She leaned over the document, scanning quickly, her smile widening by the second. But when she reached the last page, her expression flickered. Her eyes narrowed, suspicion flashing briefly. Then she sank onto the couch, crossed her legs, and took on the posture of a woman fully in control. "Well then, I guess this house is ours now. So when are you moving out?" Just as I expected. Feigning surprise, I blinked. "Move out? Where would I even go?" Vanessa shrugged, voice colder than ice, dismissing any pretense of family loyalty. "That's your problem, not ours. We're not responsible for where you live." I turned to Colin, my eyes pleading with careful calculation. "I really don't have anywhere else. Can I stay here for a while?" He looked away, avoiding my gaze. "There are plenty of rentals out there. Just find a place." But I couldn't leave. Not yet. Not until everything was set in motion. I took his arm gently, voice soft and steady. "I've been taking care of you so well here. I can keep cooking, cleaning. I won't be any trouble." Vanessa frowned, clearly weighing the pros and cons, then gave a casual nod. "Fine. Let her stay for now. At least she's useful." In that moment, she already saw herself as mistress of the house. Colin, seeing her agree, didn't argue. "Yeah, whatever. Stay." I lowered my head, hiding the smile tugging at the corner of my lips. The more relaxed they grew, the easier it would be to expose them. Truth was, I'd seen through them long ago, since the wedding preparations when Colin drained every cent I had to satisfy Vanessa's extravagant demands. The overpriced ceremony, the luxury car, the down payment on their apartment, I paid for it all. And here I was again, back in my own home, playing the part of an unpaid housemate. From that day on, Vanessa stopped hiding her entitlement. "Bring me some water," she barked one afternoon, slamming her palm on the table like a demanding servant. "Seriously, you're getting worse at this." I forced a tight smile and handed her the glass. She took a sip, then spat it out immediately, splashing me in the process. "Are you trying to burn me alive? Me and the baby?" Fury surged through me, nearly breaking my composure, but I managed a thin smile. "Sorry, I'll get you another." She clicked her tongue in annoyance and waved me off. "Forget it. Go grocery shopping. Make something decent for dinner." I nodded, grabbed the bags, and stepped outside. But as soon as I crossed that threshold, a plan was already forming in my mind. At the store, I calmly selected ingredients, assembling my own version of a revenge menu. No cheap tricks, no greasy fast food or sugar-laden desserts. That would be too obvious, too easy to trace. No, I'd serve something far subtler, far more effective. I filled my cart with comfort food. High-calorie, addictive, deceptively indulgent dishes, creamy mashed potatoes, buttered toast, baked macaroni and cheese, duck confit, sweet pumpkin soup, and of course, all their favorite processed meats and salty sauces. Everything they loved, everything hearty and nourishing in appearance, but designed to slowly weigh them down, fog their minds, and dull their bodies. That night, I laid out a full spread. Colin devoured the cheesy casseroles and risotto like a starving animal, chuckling between bites. Mom, your cooking's better than ever. Vanessa sipped the thick, oily pumpkin cream soup I'd made extra rich, a pleased smile on her face. Looks like keeping you around was a smart move after all. Eat as much as you like, I said sweetly, pushing more food toward them. You both look like you've lost some weight lately. I watched them gorge themselves, suppressing the grim smile curling inside me. They didn't notice a thing, not the trap slowly closing around them, not the fatigue creeping in, not the mental fog clouding their thoughts. And I kept cooking day after day, meal after meal. The more they ate, the calmer I felt. Every bite brought me closer. Just when it seemed like my plan was finally falling into place, something unexpected threw everything off track. While tidying up the living room, my gaze happened to fall on Colin's laptop left carelessly open on the couch. The screen was still lit, paused on a web page. He must have forgotten to close it. I hadn't meant to pry, but the words displayed stopped me dead in my tracks. How to obtain a high-value life insurance policy on an elderly family member. Common ways to disappear without triggering protection. How to change the beneficiary of a trust fund after death. I skimmed only a few lines before a cold shiver ran down my spine, settling like frost along my back. In that instant, I understood with perfect clarity. My life had been reduced to a sum of money, a target with a hefty payoff. Maybe it was fate, or perhaps just sheer luck, but that accidental glimpse might have saved me. Without a moment's hesitation, I grabbed my coat and drove straight to the insurance company. Sitting at the front desk, I kept my voice steady as I asked, "Hello, I want to check if there's any life insurance policy taken out under my name." The clerk typed for a moment before nodding and replying, "Yes, Miss Dawson. There's indeed a high-value policy registered to you. It's a premium tier plan, one of the most costly we offer." Hands trembling, I took the paperwork from him. My fingers felt ice cold. I didn't need any further proof. I knew exactly what Colin and Vanessa were plotting. To them, I was no family, just a payout waiting to be claimed. When I came home, they lounged on the sofa like nothing was wrong. Colin, surprisingly, got up to greet me, even reaching for my bag with that fake warmth I'd come to expect. "Hey, Mom, you must be tired from running errands all day." He always played the dutiful son when it served his purpose. I sat down, keeping my face neutral. "What's going on?" I asked. Scratching his head to appear casual, Colin said, "We thought maybe we'd take you to the National Forest tomorrow. Hike a bit, get some fresh air, change the scenery." Vanessa quickly added, gently placing a hand on my back, her voice dripping with false remorse. "I've been so irritable lately, snapping at you for no reason. I'm sorry, Helen. Thought it might help to reset, spend some quiet time together." I almost laughed at the act. If I hadn't uncovered their scheme already, I might have fallen for their pretense of care. But I just smiled and nodded. "Sure, sounds nice. I'll go." They both seemed surprised at how easily I agreed. Vanessa was first to recover, smiling broadly as she led me toward my bedroom. "Great! Better start packing. We leave early." I said nothing, locking the door behind me once inside. Sitting on the bed's edge, I stared at the empty backpack, slowly clenching my fists. I already knew what their plan was, but what they didn't know was that I had been preparing long before they ever started plotting. I wasn't the only one waiting for tomorrow, and the ending wouldn't be what they expected. After breakfast, we set out. I sat quietly in the passenger seat of Colin's car, watching the landscape become more desolate as we left the city behind. With every mile, my heart grew quieter, calm in a way that felt ominous. They'd chosen a remote state park on the town's edge. I'd heard the rumors. Every year, hikers vanished mysteriously or fell from cliffs. The terrain was dangerous, the trails unpatrolled. Locals spoke of it with unease. Colin knew exactly what kind of place this was. That was why he picked it. And I understood perfectly. "We're here," he announced, pulling up near the mountain's base. A sharp chill ran up my spine despite the daylight as I stepped out. Vanessa linked her arm through mine, her voice unnaturally bright. Helen, stop spacing out. Come on, don't kill the mood. I smiled warmly. Of course, we're here to relax, right? We began our hike, climbing the steep trail until the sky glowed a fiery red. Near the summit, at a scenic overlook, Colin motioned toward a large rock. Mom, sit! Take a break! He pulled a drink from his backpack and handed it to me. Electrolytes. Thought you might need a boost. I took the bottle, nodded gratefully, and raised it to my lips, just enough to seem like I drank. Not a drop touched my mouth. As I lowered the bottle, I caught a glance between Colin and Vanessa, the smug smiles confirming what I already knew. Perfect. I pulled 2 energy bars from my bag and offered them. You two should eat something too. It's a long climb. They grabbed the bars eagerly, ripping open the wrappers without hesitation. So eager, they didn't notice the subtle tears I'd carefully hidden on the packaging. I settled on the rock, feigning rest. Then I let my body go limp and collapsed. Vanessa's delighted laugh cut through the air. She actually drank it. That was way too easy. Colin's voice followed, colder than ever. Sorry, Mom, but I really need that insurance money. They began dragging me toward the edge, to a place off the trail where no one would find me. I counted silently in my head. Suddenly, 2 heavy thuds hit the ground behind me. I opened my eyes and rose slowly, brushing dirt off my clothes. They lay unconscious. See, I never drank the electrolyte drink. I only pretended. The real trick was in the energy bars, laced with sedatives I'd found hidden in the house. Over the past days, I quietly slipped some out, and today I simply returned it to them. Trying to trap me? They were far too naive. I shot a final, icy glance at them, slung my backpack over my shoulder, and started walking down the mountain. Night would fall soon, bringing sharp cold and prowling wildlife. If they didn't make it back before dark, that would be their lesson. Let them experience real survival. I hummed softly, step by step, descending. Just as I neared the trailhead, faint cries broke the silence, weak, broken calls for help. I stopped, turned toward the sound, and carefully pushed through the brush. Hidden in the underbrush, I found a man lying on the ground. His leg badly injured, his face pale, eyes glassy with pain. He looked about my age, and his voice trembled as he spoke. Can you call for help? Without hesitation, I dialed emergency services and stayed right by his side until the ambulance arrived. At the hospital, I waited quietly in the lobby while they rushed him into the ER. After some time, a doctor emerged with reassuring news. He's stable now, out of danger. When Leonard finally woke, I heard his name clearly for the first time. Thank you, he said softly, gripping my hand with surprising strength despite his weakness. I'm Leonard Graham, Executive Director of Graham Group. My heart skipped a beat. The Graham Group, the very company Colin's firm had desperately tried to win over for investment. How interesting that fate's timing never fails. I never told anyone about the connection between Leonard and Colin. You saved my life, Leonard said earnestly from his hospital bed. If you ever need anything, no matter what, just ask. I'll do whatever I can. I smiled gently, brushing the back of his hand. I just happened to be there. Doing what's right doesn't always need a reward. Though he spoke with sincerity, I chose to keep this chance encounter to myself, a quiet twist of fate I preferred to hold close. As I stood to leave, I noticed the hallway outside his room crowded with executives, assistants, and friends, all rushing in to check on him. Even in that hospital bed, Leonard exuded the calm command of a man used to leading a room. He wasn't just any patient. He was someone important. For the first time in a long while, a weight in my chest lifted. Something loosened inside me. I had no idea whether Colin and Vanessa had made it back safely from the mountain, but strangely, I wasn't in any rush to find out. Colin probably never imagined, not even for a moment, that his frail old mother was a longtime member of a local mountaineering club, trained in wilderness first aid, and fitter than most people half her age. That night, I slept peacefully, like a baby. The next morning, sunlight spilled softly across my pillow. The clock read 10 o'clock. With shaky urgency, I picked up the phone and dialed. Hello, please help me. My son and daughter-in-law went hiking at Sable Ridge yesterday. They haven't come back. I'm so worried. Please, please find them. The operator's voice immediately grew serious. Ma'am, please stay calm. We're dispatching a search team right away. 5 hours later, the call came. We found them. I took my time getting to the hospital. When I opened their room door, Colin and Vanessa lay pale and worn, looking like drenched stray cats. Colin weakly turned his head. Mom, where did you go? I blinked innocently, voice soft. I'm not sure. I just remember waking up in a hospital room. Rolling up my pant leg, I showed a neatly wrapped ankle bandage. The doctor said it's just a mild sprain. Vanessa gasped, breath ragged. We passed out suddenly. It doesn't make sense. Did you? I quickly cut her off with a hurt expression. What are you saying? Why would I ever do that? I love you both. I've been sick with worry. Colin frowned, trying to make sense of things, but stayed silent. Forget it, he muttered, flopping back onto his pillow in defeat. During their hospital stay, Vanessa didn't miss a beat returning to her usual self. I'm craving Boston lobster today. Tomorrow, abalone soup. I need to nourish myself. Once, I would have gently urged her to eat lighter, but not anymore. I simply smiled, nodded, and prepared everything exactly as she liked, adding a rich chicken soup every day without fail. She drank it with satisfaction, and I watched quietly, content. On their discharge day, I knew the charade was nearing its end. Colin returned to work, hopeful, only to be stopped at the entrance by security. I work here. Why can't I get in? He demanded. The guard didn't flinch. The system is correct. You've been removed. Colin froze, frantically messaging company executives only to receive a terse reply. Your position has been terminated. Your services are no longer required. It hit him like a punch to the chest. He came home dazed, collapsing onto the sofa, eyes hollow. I glanced over casually. Rough day? You look upset. His lips tightened, fists clenched. Then he snapped, unable to hold back. Am I really that worthless? Why would they fire me? I walked over and gently patted his head. Don't be discouraged. I have money. I'll take care of you both. You shouldn't stress about work anymore. In fact, why don't I send you on a vacation? Clear your minds. What do you say? He looked up, surprised, hesitation flickering in his eyes. Then he nodded. Yeah, maybe that wouldn't be so bad. Of course he accepted. I knew him too well. He never turned down anything that smelled like an easy win. Vanessa eagerly agreed. A vacation sounds perfect. We deserve a break. And just like that, I booked them a 7-day trip to Thailand. They had no idea this was my final gift. One last quiet, calculated kindness. As for me, I was turning the page to a new chapter. Leonard's business card lay quietly in my drawer, waiting. He'd called a few days after the hospital, asking to meet again. I still owe you dinner, he'd said warmly. Not just to say thank you. I really want to see you again. I traced the raised lettering on the card, feeling a softness in my heart I hadn't felt in years. Maybe, just maybe, my real life was only just beginning. The very first thing Colin did after landing in Thailand was message me asking for travel money. I transferred it immediately, adding with a smile, if it's not enough, just let me know. That simple sentence unchained their spending. From a few thousand to tens of thousands, from fancy restaurants to luxury boutiques, they indulged without restraint, and each time I sent the money generously. Meanwhile, back home, I began clearing them out, piece by piece. I hired movers, packed up every last belonging, clothes, junk, anything bearing their scent, and sent it all to community donation centers. Anything valuable went to charity. I left nothing behind. Then I changed the locks. By the time they returned from their so-called luxury vacation, my cleanup was complete. Every step executed flawlessly. As soon as they stepped off the plane, I sent the final blow, a detailed invoice of all their trip expenses. Every item, every dollar meticulously listed. Borrower, Colin Dawson. Because none of it came from my personal accounts. I had simply advanced all the funds through Colin's own credit line, pushing it beyond the limit, just like he did with everything else in life. I was only following his instructions and letting his name foot the bill. They assumed my money was theirs for the taking, but there's no such thing as a free lunch. Colin's phone call came swiftly, his voice thick with panic and rage. What the hell is this? What are these bills you sent me? My tone remained steady. The money you spent, Colin, it's yours to repay. He paused, stunned into silence before exploding. I'm your son. Isn't it normal for me to spend your money? I chuckled softly. Really? You still remember I'm your mother? Tell me, besides when you needed cash, have you ever looked me in the eye and said, I love you, Mom? Then I hung up. An hour later, the doorbell rang frantically, pounding like thunder. Colin's fist slammed against the door. Mom, open up, you hear me? Vanessa's voice followed, shrill and furious. Is this how you cut ties with your own son? What kind of mother does this? I walked slowly to the door and opened it just enough to block their entry with my body. Colin immediately tried to force his way in, but I held firm. Excuse me, what do you think you're doing? This isn't your house. His eyes flared. What do you mean? You gave us this house, Vanessa sneered, arms crossed defiantly. Don't act so high and mighty. We let you stay here out of kindness. I let out a cold laugh and tossed a folder into Colin's face. Take a look. Whose name is on the deed? Colin flipped through the folder, his face paling with every page. This can't be. Vanessa snatched it away and flipped through the pages, her fingers trembling. It still says your name. You tricked us. I raised an eyebrow. You were in such a rush to collect your inheritance, you didn't even read the fine print. That document you signed? It's just a non-binding property transfer intent form, nothing legally valid. Her face turned ghostly pale. Why? Why would you give us a fake contract? I smiled faintly. Because you were too busy celebrating to notice the last line, for display purposes only, not a legally binding transfer of ownership. Colin lost control and shoved me hard. I'm your son. How could you do this to me? I steadied myself, then calmly reached into a drawer and pulled out another envelope. You're not my son. He froze, color draining completely from his face. I handed him the envelope. This is a paternity test report. Your biological mother was the woman who ended my marriage. She had you and disappeared. Your worthless father was kicked out of my life because of it. But I took you in. I raised you, gave you a home, a name, an education, paid off your debts, bought you a house, gave you a family. I never had another child because I gave everything to you. And what did you give me back? Colin sank to the floor as if his spine had snapped, muttering desperately, No, you're lying. This can't be true. I crouched down, looking him in the eyes, and said softly, I've done more than enough for you. Now pay what you owe and get out of my house. Then I turned to Vanessa. Oh, and about that little drink on the mountain? I never touched it. You two were the ones who took your own medicine. I just returned it. With that, I slammed the door shut. Outside, Colin's sobs broke the silence, deep, broken, the sound of someone finally awake but far too late. And I stood on the threshold of my own life at last, not looking back. All my life, I believed I'd been a good mother. When he lost his way, I pulled him from the muck again and again. When trouble came, I held everything together without hesitation. I thought loving him deeply enough would one day earn me a sliver of warmth in return. I was wrong. Love, no matter how sincere, never guarantees it will be reciprocated. The noise outside my door finally quieted. I peeked through the peephole and saw Colin and Vanessa collapsed on the doorstep, faces pale, consciousness fading. Without hesitation, I called 911. Years of indulgent high-fat, high-sodium, high-sugar meals combined with emotional unraveling and stress had caught up with them, dragging their bodies into collapse. Later, the doctor told me they might never fully recover. Weakness would likely be their new normal. I smiled faintly. That's no concern of mine. As I left the hospital room, Colin whispered one faint sentence. Mom, I'm sorry. I paused, turning just slightly. You're right, I said softly. You should be sorry for being a thankless parasite. I turned and walked away. Behind me, the sharp beeping of the monitor sounded. A flurry of nurses rushed in. I stood outside watching the chaos unfold behind the glass, an observer to a story I no longer belonged to. Maybe I never truly had what people call family. My phone rang. A familiar name lit the screen. Where are you? I'm coming to pick you up. The moment Leonard's voice reached me, something long, tight, and bruised in my chest softened. I took a deep breath. wiped away the last traces of emotion from my eyes, and walked toward the hospital entrance. Soon, a dark sedan pulled up quietly. I raised a hand and smiled. Long time no see. Leonard smiled back from behind the wheel. It's been too long. Think it's time we finally take each other seriously. I didn't answer right away. I opened the door and slid into the passenger seat. Leonard radiated calm the moment you were near, never loud or overbearing. He never sought center stage but was always the steady light when I felt most lost. In the days that followed, I grew used to his presence. He took me to small-town book clubs, encouraged pottery classes at the local art center. We walked mornings, cooked afternoons. He listened when I spoke of Goofy, allowed me to share darker memories when they surfaced. I redecorated the house, stripping away remnants of a life arranged for someone else, replacing it with my own tastes and joy. The kitchen, once a battleground of obligation, became a peaceful place where I cooked only for myself. In the backyard, I planted an herb garden, mint, rosemary, lavender, thriving beneath the sun like my spirit. Leonard never made grand promises. He spoke no of forever. He stayed quietly, steadily, living beside me, not for me. Sometimes on the porch with tea in hand, he took my fingers gently and said, "Helen, you finally stopped living for everyone else." I smiled and nodded. Yes, I'm finally living for me. One afternoon, an anonymous package arrived. Internal documents detailing executive personnel changes at Graham Group. Colin's name had been wiped clean from every project file. I never asked who sent it. I already knew. Leonard said nothing about it, only brewed me fresh coffee and placed it quietly on the table. I took the cup, looked at him, and smiled. "Thank you." He only smiled back. In that moment, I realized something profound. True happiness doesn't always burst in fireworks. Sometimes it arrives quietly after the storm, as a steady hand reaching for yours. 60 years of life, and finally I was no longer trapped by the walls of one broken relationship. What comes next, I don't know if it'll be a fairy tale romance, but this I do know. I am writing my own story now. That evening, we sat in the backyard listening to old jazz records while the sun sank behind the trees. "Helen," Leonard asked softly, "do you think you'll ever fall in love again?" I turned to him, eyes calm and certain. "Maybe I already am.